All new at 4, a tragic situation in Phoenix as a golf cart rolls over a man, killing him. This happened overnight in the area of 24th Street in Washington. The 62-year-old man was taken to the hospital where he later died. It's unclear what led up to this accident.
The death toll continues to rise in North Carolina as the effects of Hurricane Matthew are still being felt. Searchers found 2 more bodies in submerged cars, bringing the number killed to 26. At a news conference today, Governor Pat McCrory said some areas are still underwater. He said floodwaters likely won't recede until the middle of next week. So far, Hurricane Matthew has been blamed for 43 deaths in the United States and more than 500.
Scott Bennett, former U.S. Army officer, live from San Francisco in the U.S. Mr. Bennett, it's so good to have you with us. So what do you think of the Iraqi Prime Minister's comments and the fact that Turkey wants to take part in the Mosul offensive without any invitation from Baghdad?
Well, it's clear that Turkey waged war on Iraq by invading Iraqi territory a long time ago. Iraq just simply didn't have the ability to respond, or didn't at the time have the desire to necessarily respond. But Turkey essentially invaded Iraq, and that's a declaration of war. And they have now been targeted by the Iraqi forces that are saying very simply, get out of our country. This is not your country. This is ours. And we are moving against the Daesh terrorists. And I think the Prime Minister said it very eloquently. Where were you when they invaded and did all sorts of war crimes and abused our women and things like that? Turkey was nowhere to be found. But even worse, they were backing and financing these Daesh ISIS terrorists, along with the United States, along with Israel, and along with Saudi Arabia. So it's very clear Turkey and Saudi Arabia and the United States are on the side of Daesh and the ISIS terrorists. And Russia, Iran, and the Iraqi government and China are on the side of freedom and stability and peace. So I think with Russia's taking over the United Nations Security Council, it opens up an opportunity for Russia as the United Nations Security Council chair to step in and mandate that Turkey leave and has no role in the Mosul counteroffensive. Russia can coordinate with Iraq and Iran to guarantee air cover and superiority to give the cover to the Iraqi forces as they go in and fight the Daesh terrorists. But it should be very clear that Turkey, if it doesn't move, will be targeted, and if it does stay there, then the only job that they should have is to provide some sort of a cover fire to destroy the fleeing Daesh terrorists. But my instinct in the Turkish performance is that they're not going to do that. They have from the very beginning been supporting Daesh terrorists because they've been trying to re-infiltrate and take over Iraq and make it once more the Sunni tyranny that it was under the Wahhabi strain before.
And Mr. Bennett, how come Turkey has given itself the carte blanche to just move into its neighbors' territories like we had it in Syria a few weeks ago and now in Iraq without any consent and authorization from the governments in those countries?
Well, it's a very schizophrenic policy because it seems very risky. Turkey seems to be alienating Iraq and alienating Russia because Russia is on the side of any country that is looking to destroy Daesh and the ISIS terrorists. And by Turkey refusing to destroy the Daesh terrorists and enforcing them and supporting them, and they're not fooling anybody. No one believes Turkey. No one believes Erdogan. They've been identified as sort of a pathological liar regime. Turkey risks alienating Russia and disintegrating some of its relationship. I think they started out under the wrong direction by the President Obama and the Hillary Clinton warmongering faction, which has looked to destabilize Syria from the very beginning and partition it into a Wahhabi state of chaos similar to what they did in Libya. So Turkey does have an opportunity to make a turn for the good and say, and have sort of a spiritual reformation and awakening to say, we've been on the wrong side before, we're asking for forgiveness, and now allow us to step in and destroy the enemies of Islam, the Takfiri Wahhabi Wahhabists that are in there doing all sorts of war crimes, and reestablish a relationship with Iraq and Russia and Iran in a common region stabilizing way. But I don't think it would do that because, again, they're permanently invested into the chaos, and they don't seem to be honest with themselves to admit that they've been put into a position where they're going to lose eventually. The Daesh ISIS components are going to be destroyed. Russia's assumption into the United Nations Security Council is guaranteeing that. The European chaos that's been caused by the migrant refugee weaponization and influx has guaranteed that the European political leaders are not going to be allowed to continue to wage this war, because this war has caused all of these migrants and refugees to flood into Europe. So the people of Europe are suffering, and they're finally waking up to the fact that the European, NATO, French, United Kingdom entities, the political leaders under Cameron and Merkel and Hollande, they've all been on the wrong side of history, and they've waged a war that has caused chaos. So Turkey is finding itself isolated, but it needs to really quickly wake up. But Russia, again, is the wild card. Russia's assumption to the United Nations Security Council, it gives it the political mandate to be able to make legislation and proclamations that allow Iraq to say no foreign nations are going to be tolerated in Iraq, and Turkey's presence is a declaration of war, and the United Nations should immediately demand the withdrawal. And Russia and its military power there can also provide the necessary weaponry and air cover to destroy any support that is given to Daesh, whether that support's coming from the United States, Turkey, or any NATO military entity.
Thank you so much for being with us, Mr. Bennett. That was Scott Bennett, former U.S. Army officer, talking to Press TV News out of San Francisco.
We have some breaking news just coming in. Earlier in this newscast, we told you about that deadly crash in California, a truck plunging off the San Diego Coronado Bridge. We have just learned 2 of those victims are from Arizona. They're a 62-year-old man and a 50-year-old woman, both from Chandler. Their names have not yet been released. 2 other people also killed in this. Right now, the driver is in the hospital. We're told he will be arrested for suspicion of DUI.
And a Massachusetts toddler is the latest victim of gang violence. Roxbury police said a 2-year-old girl was shot in broad daylight. The police commissioner said a gang member intended to shoot the little girl's father. Instead, she was caught in the crossfire. The bullet went through her hand and leg, but she is expected to survive. The 2 Boston police officers wounded in a shooting remain in critical but stable condition tonight. Officers Matthew Morris and Richard Sintolo were shot Wednesday night and seriously wounded as they responded to a domestic disturbance. The man who shot them was killed by police. The Boston Police Department said Officer Morris was undergoing surgery today. Officer Sintolo had surgery on Friday.
Police in New London are investigating the death of a man along Nautilus Drive. They were called to the scene around 8:30 this morning. State Police Major Crimes is also part of the investigation. Police describing this as a suspicious event, but say it's isolated and there is no threat to the public. Anyone with information is asked to call New London Police.
A crowd of Rohingya refugees have rallied in the Indian capital, New Delhi, to express their anger at a sharp escalation of violence against the minority group. The protesters have also slammed the international community's silence towards the never-ending violence.
Burmese military. Myanmar's army has started mass killing of Rohingya Muslims again. Stop the mass killing in Rakhine State. Many people have been killed, many more are missing, and 11 villages have been burned by the army.
Over 24 people have been killed by Myanmar's security forces over the past few days. The violence came after an attack on a police post near the Bangladeshi border, which left 9 officers dead. It is still unknown who carried the attacks, but the government accuses Muslims in Rakhine for the raid.
We want to end this bloodshed and violence. They rape us, kill our children, and throw them into water.
The new wave of violence has once again raised fears of a repeat of 2012 unrest, when Buddhist extremists killed scores of Muslims and forced tens of thousands to flee their homes. Rights activists have described Rohingya Muslims one of the world's most persecuted communities. After Myanmar passed the 1982 citizenship law, Rohingya Muslims who have been living in Rakhine for generations were made stateless. Since then, they are being treated as illegal immigrants there. As a result, many of them have settled in makeshift camps as refugees across different parts of South Asia, especially India, Bangladesh and Malaysia. Rohingya Muslims have faced torture, neglect and repression in Myanmar for many years. Munawar Zaman, Press TV, New Delhi.